Hello, I'm John Kelly with newsinsideout.com, and welcome to our show today. I'm very grateful and honored to be joined by Dada Madhuvidyananda from the Human World Party in Germany. You know, this past weekend, it was reported that hundreds of thousands of people were marching in Berlin in the name of indivisibility against racism and against the rise of far-right extremism across Germany and Europe. The hashtag for the German word for indivisible was what those people were congregating around, and this idea of human society as one and indivisible is foundational to the Human World Party in Germany. Very honored to have our guest, Dada Madhuvidyananda, who at the age of 19 devoted his life to the realization of the highest truth and good of all beings. He became a yoga monk and a spiritual teacher at that time. Since then, Dada has taught meditation and yoga to thousands of people in Germany, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Greece, Croatia, Slovenia, Albania, India, and Israel. In the United States, for 6 years, he led the spiritual and ecological community called Anandalina in the United States, which he co-founded. He's also an author. His book published the 7 Secrets of Success, a guide for living a successful and fulfilling life, something that would be very worthwhile for our readership. And furthermore, in 2013, Dada was the founder of the movement and party called Human World. He heads the party, which today has more than 600 members in Germany and worldwide. Human World is based on an all-encompassing humanism, and it is particularly committed to peace policy, preservation of our natural resources, and a common good. Dada Madhuvidyananda, it's a great honor to speak with you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, John. Thank you for inviting me.
Dada, what can you tell us about your background and what your vision that informed you to become the founder of the Human World Party? Please tell us all about it.
Yeah, I'm a yogic monk, and I worked in the United States for 12 years, teaching yoga and meditation there. And then I returned to Germany in around 2010. And in Germany then, 2013, I founded the political party Menschliche Welt. That's the German name. Human World, menschlich, denotes that which is characteristically human. That means compassion. That means the ability to reflect one's consciousness, to have a reflecting consciousness, to have compassion, to expand the mind, and to be able to serve others selflessly. And so we founded the party in order to create such a world, a humanistic world. And what such a world means to us is that, first of all, such a world means that every person has the basic necessities met. That means every person has enough to eat, has housing, medical care, shelter, and education. It also means that every person enjoys human rights, such as justice, dignity, and equality. It also means a human world, a humane world, also means that we live in harmony with the animal and the plant world, that we let them live according to their nature and don't exploit them and treat them cruelly. It also means that we treat our planet properly. That means we don't destroy and pollute our planet, but that we keep it healthy. And finally, it means to us that we live together as a society and help each other to unfold our individual potentials and our collective potential. And so that is the vision, that is the goal of our political party. And as you mentioned in your previous sentence, one of our fundamental statements is that the human society is one and indivisible, that we are one entity as humanity. And so with that ideation, we do our political work, which we consider as a service.
What can you tell us about the activities of your party in Germany? What are the political works that you're presently engaged in?
As a political party, we are of course engaged in running elections. We have been participating in several elections, and we are currently just now running in a state election in the state of Hessen, of which Frankfurt is one of the major cities of Hessen. So there are state elections going on, and so we have a candidate running for the state parliament there. And then looking into next year, there will be the European elections, and we are preparing now already to contest in the European elections in order to win a seat in the European Parliament.
What are your perspectives on this weekend's march and that people were congregating in the name of indivisibility? I mean, it seems that is exactly on message with what your party is all about.
It is, and we participated in the march. I am now sitting in Berlin, and Berlin is the place of our headquarters. And so on Saturday, we participated in the march there with our banner, with our volunteers, and we, in the system for the European elections, we have to collect 4,000 supportive signatures in order to come onto the ballot for the European elections. So during the rally, we collected these supportive signatures, and over 120 participants of the demonstration gave us their signature in support of our running for the European elections.
How do you find the response of the local people to your party and its positions? Do you find that this is it's very easy to you're finding a lot of parallelism in the minds of the public out there, or is there a lot of resistance to your message?
One of our key issues is peace policy, and that is a very core sentiment of the German population. Having had the history of being in the middle of 2 world wars, people in Germany do not want war anymore. And so our message of peace policies, of basically what it means to us, is basically adhering to the UN Charter, which includes the prohibition of the use of force. That means wars of aggression. So that kind of, in German, the German word for that is Friedenspolitik, means policy of peace. That is one of our main messages, and it is very, very well received. And then, of course, it's so obvious that we need to take drastic steps to protect our environment. We cannot continue to treat our planet like this as we are doing. And so our message of ecological agriculture, for example, and just ecological economics is also very well received. What's new with our party is that we say it's not just enough to create new rules and policies and this and that. We have been trying that for a long time. It requires a change in consciousness in order to overcome what we see as the global existential crisis. I mean, we are, as a humanity, facing an existential crisis. In order to overcome that, what is necessary is that we change our consciousness. That means that we change our way of thinking. And we emphasize that. And that is new to the German public. And it is also very well received because it is interesting, and the media is very interested political party, which we are, that actually promotes meditation, that promotes methods of self-reflection. Because in the end, the cause of the crisis, in the end, is within us. And so the solution is also within us, within our thinking. And when we learn to think coming from our true human core, from our humanity, only then will we be able to solve this existential crisis. So our experience as a new political party, having a spiritual base, is one of tremendous interest and appreciation from the public.
So this is very profound. What you're saying is that consciousness is an instrument of political change, that a change in consciousness, a dramatic change in consciousness, could lead to dramatic changes in the world perspective. The crises of today could be resolved through changes in the minds of all of us as participants. And so, can you speak a little bit more then about how you see that unfolding? How does consciousness change take place under the guidance of your party?
The problem is the way of thinking, and I'm saying particularly of the leaders. The way of thinking of the leaders. If the thoughts of the leaders are, for example, everyone, including the leaders, wants to be happy. Whatever we do because we want to be happy. So, if the thinking is, I will be more happy, I will be happier if I have more power, if I am richer, and if I have more sensual pleasures, even if in the process I have to harm other human beings or animals or the plant world, the nature, then I'm ready to do that. So if that is the way of thinking, it is a very defective way of thinking. First of all, it's not true, because it is obvious. More money and more power and more physical pleasure doesn't make people happier. And then to do it at the expense, harming others, doesn't make one happy at all. Maybe very much on the surface, but not really happier and more fulfilled. So this defective way of thinking, if that is changed simply by becoming calm and reflecting that I am happier when I am at one with myself, when I feel at one with my dignity, when I feel at one with my identity as a human being that is caring, that is loving, that has compassion for others, and that wants to contribute to the welfare of others, that actually makes me happy. And what makes me happy is to really understand myself. Who am I prior to thoughts? What is my true nature? That can make us very happy. And so if leaders are able to overcome a defective way of thinking of what might make them happy and come to realize that their real happiness lies in finding their own dignity and their ability to manage their thoughts and their emotions rather than to be overcome by them, and by serving others, by expressing their tremendous human compassion, then that leads to a different way of political decision making, of political action, and then we can solve the problems that we are facing in the world. So it is a way of thinking that changes when our thinking is in touch, in harmony with our consciousness, with our soul. And meditation and the science of yoga is just such a practice. It's an ancient science of self-realization, of understanding who we really are and how we can express our full human potential. And so meditation and the science of yoga, the practice of yoga, is a part of our political service that we are doing in our party.
I like to say that the caricature of leadership in North America is someone who throws other people under the bus. That's the sacrifice that we're willing to make here, is to sacrifice others. But what's really called for is the self-sacrifice. The willingness to engage in self-sacrifice is really the true hallmark of an authentic leader. Can you say something about what was it that drew you to yoga and meditation as a young man? What attracted you and convinced you of the persuasive powers of yoga to enable this kind of consciousness that could be potentially world-changing and leadership cultivating?
Yeah, I was 13 when I started with meditation and yoga. I was really at that age already looking for something. I felt that inside of me was so much more than I was expressing at the time. So I wanted to find methods to understand myself fully and to express myself fully. And so then I was searching and found people in my hometown practicing meditation and yoga, and they were inviting me to a lecture of a yogic monk, which I attended. And I then learned meditation from that yogic monk and felt at home with the practice of meditation and with yoga, and have, of course, then continued practicing it, and decided then at the age of 19 that I want to dedicate my life to this practice of self and God realization and the service to humanity. That's something that perhaps some people are not so aware of, that service is an integral part of yoga. In yoga we understand that we are completely part of this world. I mean, we breathe the air of this world. We only exist because of this world, because people, our parents took care of us when we are a baby, and the food that we eat, and the air that we breathe, and the water that we drink, everything, we are so connected. So to help other creatures and to do good to others is a completely integral part of yoga. And so to extend that, doing economic service or doing political service is a completely natural part of yoga. What's new is that Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, who is a yogic master, he formulated a concept, a socio-economic theory that helps spiritual aspirants and yoga practitioners to express their desire to serve humanity in a political way by giving a model, by giving guidelines of what we can do to create a truly human and just society.
Can you speak more in depth about this theory of Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar, the socio-economic theory that he propounded?
Yeah, Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar is my spiritual master, and he also founded the socio-economic theory called PROUD, which stands for Progressive Utilization Theory. And so it is a holistic concept of a society, of a human society. And it is the foundation of our political work. And so there are economic concepts, there are concepts of government, there are concepts of agriculture. There are so many guidelines that PROUD is providing and that help us in our political work in proposing policies that help in Germany and in other parts of the world to overcome the problems that we are facing.
Can you give an example in terms of the issues of today that the people in Germany are facing and on a possible, what a Proudistic solution might look like?
we already mentioned one, that is the general issue of peace policy. And so, one of the principles of Proud is, for example, Proud supports the rule of law. When a law exists and it's a good law, then that should be followed. And so peace policy, when we say peace policy, means simply adhering to international law. And the international law is in harmony with the United Nations Charter. So the prohibition of the use of force, of wars of aggression, is illegal. It is a violation of law. So that is one example. Proud gives a lot of emphasis on a just economy, on a decentralized economy. And so that is, of course, a major issue in Germany and worldwide, that we need to reform our economic system fundamentally. And we need to put a ceiling on the accumulation of wealth that individuals and corporations can accumulate. That is a fundamental aspect of a Proudistic economic advice.
Well, in North America, one of the guiding philosophical beacons is related to notions of free market economics. But the free market capitalism is a very deceptive posture in an economy where corporate bailouts have become the norm. For example, in the United States economy, presently under the trade wars between the United States and China, the president has allotted billions and billions of dollars for U.S. farmers who would otherwise, in a free market economy, be uncompetitive. And so we are in a strange sort of rhetorical position where when people talk about alternative economic systems, free market capitalism, is the rallying cry. It's how we've always done things. But it seems, in fact, we don't really have free market capitalism at all. We have a corporate welfare state in practice, and we have economic controls of all sorts, including these tariff systems at borders, for example, are a form of economic control. In a true abstract free market system, the best competitors would rise to the top, and the others would have to find other means of employment. And so I think it's very deceptive, the rhetorical environment that we're in, where if anyone challenges, even in an abstract way, the prevailing system, that's denounced as some kind of dictatorial government measure. But we already have so much government intervention, the bank bailouts in the 2007 recession, and the current trade war, farm bailouts being two examples. These are extraordinary measures, costing billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Do you have any perspectives on Atlantic trade between Canada, the United States, and Europe? Is that a topical issue that you find that people in Germany are interested in access to American goods? I know there's been significant pressure on trade with Russia, and that is topical in Germany. Do people in Germany talk about trade and economic issues with their Russian neighbors?
With the Russian neighbors, you may know that there have been sanctions towards Russia, economic sanctions. I believe that the majority of the German people would rather see those sanctions go. And a lot of medium-sized and small-sized, even large-sized businesses in Germany suffer because of these sanctions. They don't seem to make a lot of sense, and their justification is also questionable. That's what I can say about the opinion, I think, of the majority of people in Germany.
People, in other words, I hear you say that people question the validity of any benefit to the German population in participating in those sanctions. It would seem that those sanctions may have some sort of a political aura of cooperation, more related to NATO alliance versus any sort of meeting any immediate economic necessity.
That's right. That's right. And as I say, from what I understand, the majority of German population does not support the continuation of this policy of sanctions, economic sanctions with Russia.
In line with these questions of alliances and allegiances and traditions and legacies from the 20th century and the post-Second World War era, we see now that in Europe that the British, of course, the United Kingdom, are engaged in a Brexit negotiation, whereby the seeds of dissolution of the European Union have arisen in the form of the populist elections and campaigns that led to that position. Do you see this as an emerging trend? Do you, as someone who has conducted social service and educational programs in different parts of Europe, do you see a trend towards dissolution of the European Union, or do you see an urge towards greater integration?
Well, people love a unified Europe and love the idea that we are part of a European family, so to speak. However, the EU as an economic construct is it's based on a purely capitalistic understanding of the economy, and that comes then with a lot of injustices. And so people are feeling that, and the inequality within Europe, within the European countries, and also within each country, the inequality is increasing. And so the EU as a construct is actually promoting such inequality. And so there is more and more unrest, and I think it's going to continue. I think it's not a viable model, the way the EU economic system is running right now.
So I'm hearing you say that your vision includes a unified Europe in the future, but under a different model.
Yeah, under a different economic setup. If we talk about the four freedoms, the freedom to just move capital and personnel and services and so on. When individual countries have not come to a healthy own economy, then what the present system does, it favors the stronger, the richer economies, and the poorer economies, they get more and more trouble and they get more and more into debt. So that system doesn't work. We would like to have a more unified, and we are coming together as European peoples, but it needs to be on a basis of economic justice and not on the basis of that the richer become more rich and the poorer suffer more.
What I'm hearing you say is essentially that we're seeking to cease and desist the trend towards economic exploitation that is leading to these greater divisions in capital. In North America, we talk about the dissolution of the middle class as an example of this. The term 1% has been a rallying cry as a populist movement in the United States, as well as echoes of it appeared in Canada. But these are grave concerns about the disappearance of what had been considered the middle class, and that the movement of capital in the hands of fewer and fewer individuals. And furthermore, what I had mentioned earlier with regards to the capitalization, the financing of the failed corporations by federal governments, including the bank bailouts, which under any free market capitalism would have really resulted in the dissolution of those organizations. These failed organizations were propped up under artificial means, and it only has seemed to further exaggerated the grievances and the problems that had arisen. Here a very topical area that has also arisen in recent years is related to cryptocurrency. I'm sure that you're familiar with concepts like Bitcoin.
Yes.
Does your party see a future in cryptocurrencies? Where do you see that working in a proudest economy?
It is a trend that will continue to grow, and we see a lot of potential there in democratizing the economy, because a central part of the economy is, of course, the financial sector. And so, in principle, we see a lot of potential of democratizing the financial sector, and with that, the economy. It needs to be led, and then we are coming full circle again, it needs to be led by people who are committed to benevolence, to use these new technologies and these new processes with benevolence, with the welfare of all in mind. If that is the case, then these cryptocurrencies, I think, have tremendous potential, just like any other technology. We are at a stage now where the technology is like exploding. So many changes will happen with the digitalization, and so many advancements will be coming. And so much power will be released from these new technologies. So that's why we find it is crucial. It is now crucial that the human consciousness, the human compassion matches up with those technologies. Otherwise, it's like having babies and give them knives. There's nothing wrong with knives, but having babies handle knives is extremely dangerous. So with these incredible technologies that we are developing now, we need to mature, we need to grow up, and we need to have those technologies dealt by people who are committed to the welfare of all, who are able to control their mind and their body, who are able to manage their emotions. If people cannot manage their own emotions and their own thoughts, what business do they have managing the destiny of hundreds and thousands and millions of people? That's why one of our major activities is actually leadership training, benevolent leadership training. We cannot expect everyone to basically change or take responsibility for all the complicated issues that we are facing in society. It is just natural that some will take the leadership in that and take responsibility. And they need to be trained. They need to be trained in self-reflection. They need to be trained in the ability to manage their thoughts, their emotions, their energies towards the good of all. Altruistic way of thinking and acting. That is what is required. And so we do benevolent leadership training sessions. That is actually one of our major goals as a party, to be a platform where people can develop their leadership skills, their true leadership skills. That means skills that help to lead towards welfare and to lead towards progress, individual progress as well as collective progress. And so we see that actually as a major important task that humanity has to fulfill. That is the establishment of benevolent leadership and practices, techniques that help individuals to be able to reflect their consciousness and to act out of their benevolence, out of their compassion, and out of their benevolent intellect will be so crucial when we are foreseeing the enormous powers that will be unleashed through these new technologies.
Can you tell me more about the role of self-reflection and control of human emotions? Can you, without giving away any trade secrets, can you tell us more about how this relates? How does self-reflection lead to control of emotions?
Emotions are inseparably connected with our thinking, the way we think. And so we can direct our thinking. We can learn to control our thoughts. And so we can learn to control our emotions. And so how can we learn to control our thoughts? By being able to reflect with our consciousness. I am aware that I am seeing you. I am aware that I am thinking. So this awareness, which is prior to thought, can guide, can direct my thoughts. And when I am able to calm my thoughts and my emotions, then I can come to a place inside of me of some deeper truth. What is the core of my being? What is my dignity? What is my true human nature? And it is benevolence. It is goodness. The core in each being and the core in each human being is goodness, with a desire to express itself and to experience happiness. And we know from the time that we were in the mother's womb that we are inseparably connected with the outside world, with our mother, with the world. So, in order to be healthy and happy and well ourselves, we need to be taking care of the health and the happiness of others, of our environment. It is but natural. And so this natural core of us, we can access through practices of meditation. That is what meditation does. We calm our thinking, our mind, and come to a place which is the source of our thoughts prior to thinking. And there we find a peace, a bliss, a goodness. And out of that we can then think and feel, out of that goodness, out of that innate awareness of our true being and our connection with the world. I hope that you were able to follow me there.
I feel that in a sense that I with your spoken word guidance, I was able to connect with some of the profound senses that arise within that conception, and at the same time, I recognize, that certainly in North America, that there much of the discourse that we hear from leadership around political issues of the day in between Canada and the United States, for example, the rhetoric that was coming out of some of the figures in the United States related to people going to hell if they didn't reach some sort of an agreement, which informs us of the superstitious dogma that is deeply, deeply entrenched in our Western culture due to pervasive religious structures that were the de facto economic and political structures of certainly of the medieval era. That what we're proposing, that versus the notion of original sin, that man and women were born of sin, and it all gets worse from there, which is a fundamentally dogmatic principle in Catholicism. Certainly not the only guiding principle of that religion, but certainly incredibly pervasive. This seems to found a form of superstitious knee-jerk response in populations who are introduced to concepts that define the fundamental human nature in a different way. This notion of innate goodness and innate wholesomeness is very contrary to pervasive concepts of original sin that guide and lead very superstitious, knee-jerk responses to any alternative suggestion. This is a very, as spiritual philosophy, it's very revolutionary for the Western colonial societies to encounter indigenous conceptions born of legacy practices and education in countries like India. It's very revolutionary to discover that the indigenous people were able to carry a deeper, more informed dignity based on practical experience of innate goodness. I find, as someone who has worked for decades as a counselor and therapist, that the pervasive notion of original sin has informed generations of families living today, not only the people alive today, but that their ancestors, their grandparents, and their great-grandparents were informed by these dogmatic and superstitious perspectives, and it's only by developing an attachment to something new, the trapeze artist who is swinging in the circus from waiting for the next place to grasp is stuck in this cycle of guilt and shame, for example. If a new opportunity presents itself, are they going to reach out for the new thing? Otherwise, it seems to me, again, as someone who's surveyed the population on a very personal level, as a practitioner with an international clientele for like 20 years, it seems that these very entrenched superstitious dogmas that we've inherited from our medieval religious education. Do you have any comment on introduce your experience as a teacher, as someone who's trained thousands of students in leadership development schools of the skills of the type that you're describing, about the types of resistance that people may express in the course of discovering new perspectives and new ways of integrating and healing?
Actually, John, my experience is more that of having left those superstitions behind, especially the young generation. They have heard about it, but they just can't swallow it anymore. And so, in my experience of teaching yoga and meditation, as I said, I worked for 12 years in the United States, and I was teaching there in different universities. I had dozens and sometimes hundreds of students in the hall practicing yoga and meditation with me. And so I found a tremendous openness, and I think we see that also in the society. Yoga practices and meditation are becoming so mainstream, common. And also the modern science, the neurosciences, they inform us actually what is going on in the brain and what leads to coherence, what leads to a sense of harmony and balance of energy in our brain. And so it all points to the experience of harmony within oneself and within the world that we are all seeking, and that we actually carry as our core, as our potential. And so, John, in my experience, I actually encounter very little of hanging on to those dogmas. I find people telling me I'm struggling a bit with it because it has been taught to me for such a long time. But people are just so ready to say goodbye to those dogmatic concepts. And the beauty is, it's so easy to realize the truth, to experience what is really true inside of myself. It is so easy that when we become calm, that we can feel and we can realize what our true nature is, that it just isn't that we are evil and that we are sinners, but that we just are. We are just beings We are just an expression of consciousness, and that we so much long to experience love and to express our love.
And so, as you were saying earlier, that in terms of leadership practices, this benevolent service approach becomes an authentic expression of that rediscovered inner profound love.
Yes, yes. It just becomes a natural expression of someone who is in touch with his or her own self, his or her own dignity. It becomes natural then we make efforts to speak in such a way and act in such a way that we express our true nature, what we truly want. And yeah, it could be that it has been covered by so many experiences. And yet the readiness of allowing ourselves to find the truth inside of ourselves, the true nature of ourselves, that I have seen in my experience overcomes all obstacles. Even people who have been in such a contracted state of mind, their desire, their longing to be authentic and to find their own dignity and express their own dignity has enabled them to free themselves of those dogmatic bondages and those misconceptions about themselves.
So I'm hearing further, and I can relate as someone who grew up in the post as a late baby boomer. I was, of course, informed by the cultural movements in North America, the peace movements, the rejection of traditional values. Maybe in some ways at the expense of social harmony, but the urge to reject what were perceived as dehumanizing influences in our cultures and guiding philosophies, including the abandonment of traditional religion. These were cultural forces that informed a lot of decisions, certainly, and I think for many of our baby boomer audience members as well. And so I hear you say that even in 2018, that these notions have a special kind of currency, even a universal currency, that leadership who are competent in manifesting an aura of benevolence through their day-to-day conduct and practices, through their words and their actions, have a powerful populist influence on the public, that people respond very strongly and favorably to the perception that this is possible, that they can participate in lives that look like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we find that people tell us, wow, you look so authentic, we can trust you. They may say, I mean, many people actually are quite cynical. That we also find they say, you can't change anything anymore. It's too late, and we have seen so much trying, and it has never worked out. That is also there. But when people just see, we are simple people, but the authenticity of our members and of our activists and so on, we find that people really appreciate that very much, and many people tell us that gives us hope, because they feel it must be possible. It's not seen so much in the political leadership. We see so much self-centered agitation and so much self-centered activity going on, and so people have a hard time. But still, there is some hope and some deep belief that it must be possible in another way, and certainly it is. And when people say, it's impossible to change, then we always like to say, look, change will happen. You don't need to worry about that. A lot of change is going to happen in the next years and in the next decades. A lot of change that will take care of itself. We have now the opportunity to direct this change in a way towards benevolence, towards the welfare of all. And we have the choice of either doing it, or just saying it's not possible and not doing it, or perhaps even acting against it. So we are choosing to do what we can to express our natural potential, our love, our compassion, in our effort to direct this change, which is going to happen anyway, life is going to continue and a lot of change is going to happen. So let us work towards directing that change towards the welfare of all. And it is a message that we are bringing that we do hear, that people find a lot of hope.
This relates to one of the founding philosophical principles that I understand guides your party, which is called Neo-Humanism, in relation to environmental welfare, animal welfare. And so could you speak some more about Neo-Humanism for us?
Yeah, Neo-Humanism. It is a philosophy that was also coined and developed by Prabhat Ranjan Sattar. It's an extended humanism. When humanism is concerned about the welfare of all, then concerned about the welfare of human beings, then the extension of neo-humanism is that it is concerned about the welfare of human beings and of animals and of the plant world and even of the inanimate world. That we include everything in our benevolent vision. That is the basic idea of neo-humanism. So that we do care for the human beings, but not at the expense of animals. And that we do care for the welfare of human beings and animals, but not at the expense of nature and the plant world. And even within the human world, humanism is already good, where it says, transcend your limited view of nationalism, of racism, of sexism, transcend all that and see all of human beings as worthy of respect and of dignity. Neo-humanism extends that to animals and plants and the inanimate world. And yeah, that's a fundamental philosophical concept that guides our party's work.
Well, we see that in North America that veganism has become a multi-billion-dollar trend in the food industry. Is veganism very popular in Germany as well?
Yes, it is growing. Veganism is growing in Germany. Mostly as a response to the animal farm factory that is going on. The animal farms, the factory farm, animal farms, Massentierhaltung in Germany, this intensive holding of animals, which is so cruel. And so people just do not want to participate in that, and so they turn vegan. It is a growing movement in Germany and all over Europe, especially amongst the younger generation.
Well, we see that one of the consequences of factory farming, very, very visible example, is in the United States during the current hurricane season. In the Carolinas, the pig factory farms were storing a lot of sewage waste in open pits, which of course were overwhelmed by flood conditions in the storms, and so they've managed to propagate the pig waste throughout the state. Everyone's living under this toxic condition as a consequence of the mismanagement and perhaps misguided environmental practices and animal stewardship practices of a few who seek to profit from those industries. These are very deeply entrenched industries in North America, and of course, as I understand, German cuisine is heavily vested in beef and pork and other meat. Meat is a very important staple in the traditional diet. I think that in relation to these environmental consequences here in British Columbia, we've been facing tremendous controversy over pipeline initiatives to move fuel products through pipelines in different parts of the province where we haven't had as much traffic, with tremendous potential environmental consequences. The people here have been in outrage. The university professors, the members of parliament, have all faced arrest at protests against the corporate interests. And so this notion of stewardship and mismanagement of environmental resources has arisen again and again. Some would say that it would only be under conditions of an intense crisis that the extremist attachments to those types of practices could ever be shaken loose. In other words, that it's only through a terrible catastrophe that humanity could reflect on and upon making different choices. I understand that your group seeks to, through a peaceful process, to encourage a change in a way of thinking. But again, are human beings so stubborn that we can only learn, that only with the collapse of Atlantis can we learn about the mistakes we made with all of our technology?
Suffering is a great teacher. So reflecting what you said just now, that many people think it will require a lot of suffering for humanity to learn the lesson. That is for the future to see. I would like to come back to the beginning. It is basically that everyone seeks happiness. And so those who are making these decisions for profit maximization, they put profit over the lives of others and over nature. They do that because they believe it makes them more happy. So our approach is that when we learn methods, techniques that help us to understand that we will be happier when we stay in touch with our dignity, with our human dignity, with our innate goodness, and when we then serve others, help others to develop and create a cooperation in our environment, that makes us really happy. But we need to learn this. And that's why we are propagating these practices so intensively, because we believe it doesn't have to be through so much suffering. It may or may not come. What is required, John, and I'm coming back to a previous point, is a different leadership, a benevolent leadership. And so we are focusing our work on helping people to unfold their benevolent leadership qualities. The sooner a significant number of benevolent leaders are in position of leadership, the better it is for turning the present trend, which is towards catastrophe, no doubt, to turning the present trend around. And so we are committed towards that. And not just with our meditation practice, but extremely pragmatically. For example, by contesting elections. I mentioned we are preparing now for the European elections, because when we win a seat, which is our goal at the next year's European elections, it will be a breakthrough. It will be a breakthrough of a new leadership, a benevolent, spiritually motivated and based leadership with concepts of decentralized economy, with Prautistic concept and Neo-Humanistic concepts, speaking in terms of our philosophies. That will be a major breakthrough. And so by creating breakthroughs, we open up new windows of possibility that people see all over the world. It is possible. And so that can create such an energy of in the minds of people of what is possible, that we work towards a very speedy evolution of a different trend in society that leads towards a truly benevolent society through a benevolent leadership.
So on the eve of potential catastrophe, a new vision has arisen. and you hope to implement that vision in the forms of political standing to achieve stature in leadership in European politics, and to offer a beacon of hope and guidance, perhaps through your team's good example. As you say, that if these altruistic leaders are successful in becoming established, that their influence will be widespread, and that the opportunity to inspire more altruistic leadership from amongst the population will arise at that time through the good role models who will be brought forward. And so I've heard you say today that your team is actively involved and engaged in the cultivation of this leadership, that you yourself have decades of experience in leadership training through yoga and meditation instruction, not only in Europe but in North America, that you have it seems to me that you have an excellent grip on the minds of the population. You understand, through your personal efforts, that you understand the minds of the people today, and so I find it very inspirational that you took that understanding and translated it into this program that has the potential. It seems clear it has the potential to change the game. If our present leadership is so caught up in catastrophic vision and born of unresolved trauma and emotion from past lives or this lifetime, that it seems that ultimately that it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it is only through the inspiration of a new type of leadership emerging from within the population that we can course correct. Of course, it seems this is quite natural that the younger people are the hope of the future in most circumstances, but under the best form of guidance, it seems that the promise of the youth will be best manifested. In the United States, many of the very moralistic initiatives of the earlier generations, such as the peace movement of the 1960s, which was a very popular movement, and in fact was so vigorous that it sought to undermine the war initiatives of the Vietnam era, and it was understood that as a consequence, the entrenched political forces of the establishment subverted those movements through the replacement of the people's leadership with people who are ultimately de facto establishment figures, and so there's such a thing as the subversion of movements. We see today intense efforts are made in the social media world to silence the voices of independent thinkers. We recognized just this past week that 800 independent news outlets lost their positions on the largest platforms, including Facebook and Twitter. And so it seems again that there is in the realm of ideas, that there is a very vigorous contest for that would seek to suppress the emergence of new thinking and new leadership. Do you have any thoughts about the present conditions in our social media? I think you've clarified that it's only if the technology is used with the correct psychology that we'll see the best result. What are your thoughts about the conditions that the social media environment is bringing today?
Yeah, it's the attitude behind it, what it is used for, is the most important factor here. And the social media is totally owned by private enterprises, so it's based on profit interest. It's not based on creating the greatest welfare in a cooperative way for all the people. And so I appreciate projects like yours to create independent media, media that is there to further, to advance the welfare of everyone, and to have others participate in a cooperative way, in a way that will help everyone to expand and express their potential. And so I think that is one of our tasks. And that's also a growing movement in Germany, alternative media. We are still very much dependent on sharing our our ideas and messages through these commercial media, Twitter and Facebook and so on, and YouTube, it completely controls the social media landscape. And at the same time, I think there are initiatives that are building cooperative, independent media, and that is very healthy. And we as a party support those projects and support independent media.
Well, that's very refreshing. I'm very glad to hear that that in a human world model, that the independent media could thrive and continue to bring diverse points of view in order to participate in the fomenting of solutions to the world's problems. It doesn't seem that only a unilateralist approach is going to succeed, and we've seen the failings of the Soviet system under the Stalinist regime. China has retained its communist government, but it's not the Maoist China of the purges of the 1960s and 1970s, and so there is an intense need, certainly at all levels. As you said, everyone seeks happiness, from leadership to the most ostracized members of our community. Everybody's seeking this self-fulfillment, and there's this pervasive sense that we have not yet, with all of our great achievements and many great achievements in the West and in Asian culture, absolutely, but we have only yet begun to explore our potential, to realize what human potential could be, or what it could be to be a real human being. I feel tremendously satisfied with so many of hearing from you and so many of the points that you've raised. In summary, would you like to add anything else to our conversation today that you feel would be important to share?
I'm also very happy and very grateful for this interview. I enjoyed it a lot, John. I invite everyone who is watching this, if you have any questions, we have a team that speaks English, so I invite you to contact us through email. The best way would be to send us an email to contact, that's German, KONTAKT, Kontakt @menschlichewelt.de. I will spell that too. That is menschlichewelt.de. That's our email address. Perhaps you can also, with the video somewhere, write it out so that people can see how to spell. And if you like our ideas and would like to participate or to support in any way, find us on the social media, on Facebook, Menschliche Welt, on Twitter, on YouTube, and share our message, like our comments. You can get them translated these days easily online. And again, I thank you so much for this interview. I enjoyed it very much, and I invite everyone, if you would like to learn more, if you would like to participate, or if you would like to help us really make a breakthrough at the European elections, we would be very, very happy to hear from you.
That's excellent, Dada. It's been my great pleasure to speak with Dada Madhuvidyananda from the Human World Party in Germany. They are seeking to win a seat in the European Parliament. They have many good initiatives and excellent, deep and rich philosophical perspective on the leadership needs of today. So I do hope that our readers and viewers will reach out to them to find out more. We'll include links to email and their website, of course, in our article on newsinsideout.com. And of course, this interview will be distributed through our social media platforms as well. Great honor and pleasure to speak with you, Dada. I hope that we will stay in touch, and that I will continue to learn more about the good works of your party, and holding out tremendous hope for your success and the success of your team in their courageous efforts to bring a new kind of political vision to the world.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you to your viewers.